The Phillies, they have to win tonight against the Mets. It's almost must win, in my opinion. I'm going to tell you why. Shane Haff from the Painted Lines Chalk Talk joining me at 9 a.m. the second half of this show, talking Eagles winning a joint practice. Is that a thing? All that and more. Don't go anywhere. Trending in the AM starts in 30 seconds.
Holding gets around in front.
And Philadelphia has it.
What's up, everybody? Good morning and welcome to Trending in the AM right here on DSM Media. Live, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. You know the drill. Like, share, retweet, follow. All the great things you do on all the social media platforms to help continue to spread the word. Help us grow that algorithm. Drop comments in the comments section. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. All that stuff goes to helping make this show grow, this network grow, and we greatly appreciate all your help. I am Phil Stifle. You can follow me on Twitter at Beard and Knowledge. We got lots to dive into today. As you see, I'm rolling solo right now. My man Jason, not feeling a little well today, a little under the weather. You got to know that if Jason is scheduled to be on the show and he doesn't show up, he is not feeling well. So my thoughts to my man. Hope he feels better. And we get him back on with my man Mark on Monday for Overreaction Monday. We are going to talk Phillies here to start the show. Got a huge series starting up here. Sorry, I'm talking and I'm getting myself set up and rolling here on different sites here. We got a big Phillies game, obviously. Big series this weekend against the Mets. It's an important series, and we're going to talk that to start the show at 9 a.m. The second half of the show, if you're watching on replay. Shane Haff, Chalk Talk, the Painted Lines. He's going to be joining me. We're going to talk Eagles, the joint practice yesterday against the Browns, everything that's going on and his thoughts on this Eagles team. That's right. Let's go, Phils. Huge weekend series. So let's just dive right into it here in 3 seconds here. Make sure I get my last click set up here to help continue to promote this show here. There, done. All right, now all my focus is right. Yes, no DeGrom, no Scherzer. This is a winnable series. It's a 4-game set in 3 days against the Mets. It is a winnable series for the Phillies. But it is important for the Phillies to jump out tonight. You got Aaron Nola on the mound going up against Bassett. This is the game, to me, that sets the tone for the entire series. And, you know, some people might say, well, it's 1 of 4. Why would it matter so much? Because you got to let the Mets know that you're for real, that you're not going to be messing around. You're going to be at home. It's going to be a Friday night, beautiful night. Citizens Bank Park's probably going to have 35, 40,000. Well, 35 of the 40,000 screaming Phillies fans, because you know Mets fans are going to be invading the park tonight, and we need to be able to drown them out. We can't let them get any momentum this weekend, the fans, which we're going to talk about that in a second because, you know, Mets fans invading the bank, it just drives me nuts when they invade Philly. But it's important with your crowd, packed house tonight, to come out, put your foot on the Mets' throat, and just say, hey, yo, we're for real. We might not be able to catch you in the standings. Maybe we can. You never know. Probably not. But we are for real. And tonight's game, you got no DeGrom, no Scherzer, as Kyle says, going. Bassett's their best pitcher that's going this weekend. No Walker, no Carlos Carrasco. They're going to be piecing it together this weekend with their rotation. Guys from the minor leagues, guys at long relievers, all different things like that. They only have 2 of their starters even announced for this series so far. So it's important to come out. And you got Aaron Nola, who we've been debating the last couple of weeks. I mean, obviously, Zach Wheeler is the ace of his team. But is Aaron Nola having a better season, kind of, sort of, than Zach Wheeler? So you need your guy to come out tonight and pitch another dominant outing, take control of this series right from the get-go. Obviously, you got Bradley Falter going one of the games on Saturday. You can't have a lot of confidence in that. But you got Zach Wheeler going in the series. Kyle Gibson, who's been pitching fantastic. Yeah, fight night at the bank. Yeah, God help security. I agree. Look, we're going to get sidetracked because Kyle's saying it. You know, I'm saying it. Freddie's saying it there. Games at the bank or even back at the vet for the others. Yeah, Peterson's really good. Hey, Bassett would be an ace on some teams. We're going to get into these guys' numbers in a bit. I don't doubt it. The way the Mets fans invade the Citizens Bank Park, the vet. I know Kyle's older like me. He's been going to games at the vet and been around for a long time. Freddie, I'm not sure how old you are, but I remember even as a young child, Mets fans. My first Phillies game was a Phillies Mets game in 1986. I still remember it. They gave it a little wristwatch with the Phillies P on it to all kids, 14 and under, whatever it is. I still remember it. But since that day, I remember Mets fans coming, heckling, causing problems, the fights that happen. Ah, man. Dude, I have this vivid memory. I forget what year it was. It was, I closed it out. I had his numbers up. Now I don't anymore. Rico Brogna was a Philly. He was a former Met, Philly, first baseman. All right, player. Nothing special, nothing bad, but I like the guy. And he was a former Met, and he was in Philly one year playing. And the Mets fans came to town, and they were heckling the hell out of Rico Brogna, who was in a slump, who wasn't having a good series, a good stretch. I don't know what it was. And I got into a little scuffle with a bunch of Mets fans saying, yo, chill out. Come on. Get out of our park. And then they got all lubricated, whatnot. Long story short, I stood up for my man Rico Brogna, and it didn't end well for me. But that's beside the story. The Phillies fans need to drown the Mets out this weekend. That's what it's got to be. And it's going to be a beautiful weekend, not just tonight. Tomorrow, it's going to be a beautiful day. It's not going to be that super hot 100-degree day or anything like that. All weekend, weather's going to be spectacular at Citizens Bank Park and in Philly. So we need the Phillies fans to show up. I expect them to show up, and I expect them to drown out that Mets crowd. But the only way they could drown that Mets crowd out is if the Phillies play well. The Phillies win these games, at least compete. And it starts with Aaron Nola tonight. Aaron Nola, in his last outing, was fantastic. 8 innings, 1 run. It was against the Mets, obviously. 4 hits, 8 strikeouts, 1 walk. Aaron Nola, in general, lately, has been fantastic. His ERA now for the season is 3.07. His whip is almost under 0.9. He's at 0.93, fourth best whip in baseball right now. 6th most strikeouts in baseball, but he's only 8 and 9, and it's because of the lack of run support that the Phillies give him. And we're going to get into the run support in a second here and how important that is. But it's important for Aaron Nola as one of the top guys on this team to come out and pitch like one of those top guys. He can't have an outing like he did against the Braves back in late July, gives up 5 runs or anything like that. He needs to come out like he's done. He's given up 1 run each of his last 3 starts. He needs to pitch like that. He needs to pitch like an ace. Against the Mets this year, obviously he had the 8-inning complete game loss, 1-0 in his last outing. In April, he pitched against May. He pitched against the Mets. He went 7 innings, gave up 1 run in that. We lost that game 8-7. Again, obviously, that was that the that was the Jesus Familia game, I believe. Ah, man, that's a bad memory right there. In April, he pitched twice against the Mets. He went 6 innings, gave up 3 runs, 3 1/3, gave up 3 runs. So he knows how to pitch against the Mets. Solo show for the first half, George. We got an Eagles guest coming on at 9 a.m. the second half of the show. I'll be chatting with him. But yeah, we got solo for the first 30 minutes here. I liked Rico. Weren't many bright spots on those mid to late 90s teams. No, they were not. That was some dark times in Philly. But Aaron Nola has had the number of the Mets. So it's important for him to come out, pitch well again, and then get some run support. Now, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough for the Phillies to score a lot of runs, obviously. As Kyle said, Bassett, Peterson, these guys aren't bad. Chris Bassett is not a bad pitcher. He's got a 3.27 ERA, a 1.13 whip, 134 strikeouts. He is no slouch. He would be the ace on a lot of teams in baseball. And he's pitched well against the Phillies. In that last game, he pitched against the Phillies. 5 shutout innings, struck out 5. He's pitched against the Phillies a couple times earlier this year in late May. 6 innings, 1 run, 7 strikeouts. 5 2/3, 1 run, 8 no, that was 4 strikeouts. I can't see there. So he has the Phillies number as well. So while we talk with the Phillies, yeah, exactly. When we talk about how Aaron Nola needs run support tonight, I almost feel bad for Aaron Nola because it's not like the Phillies should expect, or the fans should expect the Phillies to be able to bust out for 8, 9 runs against Bassett. because Chris Bassett's a great pitcher. But we still need it. We want to be considered a legit team right now. We want to be considered a legit playoff team, a legit contender, a team that can compete with the big teams. To be able to do that, you need to come out in this big moment on a Friday night in front of a packed house with one of your aces on the mound, going up against a great pitcher, yes, but it's important for them to come out, score 3 or 4 runs. I mean, that's not like a bust out for the offense, but if the Phillies could somehow manage 3 runs against Bassett over 6 innings, that's huge. It's important for the bats to come out and not go 5 in 8 shots. Yeah, exactly. Look, we need the Phillies to come out and score 3 runs tonight. And it starts with the top of the order. And we are getting Kyle Schwarber back tonight. Now, there are reports that he is not going to play the field. So that affects the lineup significantly, in my opinion, still. Because if he's got a DH Kyle Schwarber, that means Derek Hall doesn't get to play tonight. And then that means Nick Maton probably in left field, which isn't probably the best scenario when you're going up against elite pitchers like Chris Bassett. But it's important Kyle Schwarber being back in that lineup. But it's important for this team to be aggressively selective. Is that a phrase? I don't know if I might coin that. Aggressively selective at the plate. If you look at Chris Bassett's numbers, he's gone 5 2/3 sometimes, 7 innings other times, 8 innings other times, 5 innings. You can get the pitch count up on Chris Bassett. And it's important that the Phillies do that. But also it's important. It just drives me nuts. You see it all the time. They just take pitches because it's a take pitch time in an at bat, and they waste perfect pitches. So it's aggressively selective that we need them to be tonight. And Kyle Schwarber back in the lineup. I would expect the lineup because of all the things that are going on. You lose Marsh and Schwarber not being able to play the field possibly. You're probably going to go with a lineup something like this: Schwarber, Hoskins, Bohm in your 1-2-3 spot. JT Castellanos 4-5. Now, whether they go Stott or Segura 6-7, I don't think it really matters, honestly. And then it's going to be Vierling and Maton 8 and 9, center field, left field. That top half of the lineup, the top 5 or 6, need to get on base and need to score some runs. Would be fantastic if Chris Bassett gave up a leadoff home run to Kyle Schwarber tonight. But the odds are he's not. But, it would be great to see. But we need those guys, the Hoskins, the Bohms, the JTs, to be aggressive tonight, to drive the ball. And when they get their pitch, they cannot miss it. Because it's not like Bassett's going to miss often. Nick Castellanos in the 5-hole. And I brought his stats up here real quick, and I wanted to just go over some different things. Nick Castellanos getting a lot of crap for obviously not being what we expected. And whether he's turned the corner or not, and I'm looking at his game logs here, and he's hitting almost 300 in the month of August. His on-base percentage is over 350. His OPS is almost 900. He is turning a corner. He is now gone, let me count this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight games with a hit. He's got a 7-game hitting streak going. He's got 3 doubles in his last 4 games and a home run. That is what we need to see. We need to see him start to drive the ball more. Yeah, the power numbers are still not there, but really Nick Castellanos was never a super power hitter. He's driving and runs, but he was a doubles guy, a guy that goes to the gaps. And the fact that he's gotten his average up to where he is, he's got his on-base percentage back up over 300. His slugging percentage is almost creeping to 400 for the season. It's telling me that there are some signs of life in Nick Castellanos. People have given him a really, really hard time. And I get it. I really do. You sign a $100 million contract. You come in here with all the fanfare. I didn't go to college. I learned to hit baseballs or whatever his saying was. You expect a lot out of the guy. But honestly, I mean, you look at it, and I got his entire career up here. Outside of last year's out of control numbers, what was he really? He was a guy that's going to hit about 20 home runs, driving 80 to 100 RBIs. He's going to hit 270, 290. He never really had he only one time in his career, 2 times in his career, had a slugging percentage over 500. I mean, what did people really expect with Nick Castellanos? And that's something that bugs me because yes, he signed the big contract. We want to see him perform to that elite level, but we're expecting things that he's not consistently capable of doing. If we can get him back to a 270 hitter, a guy that's hitting doubles into the gap, driving the ball, that's all we really need. You get Bryce Harper back in a couple weeks, less than a couple weeks. Reports are he's going to be in the minor league system, bouncing around all over the Philly region and all the different places, Reading, Clearwater, or not Clearwater, Reading, the place in Jersey, Scranton or Lehigh Valley, whatever it is. He's going to get his work in this week, this upcoming week. And then by the end of the month, by September 1st, he's going to be back in that lineup. Then JT's down to the 5 hole. Then Castellanos is down to the 6 hole. Castellanos can get right and be the best 6 hole hitter down the stretch in baseball. It's going to be, I want people to be realistic expectations for Castellanos the rest of the year. And if he has a 1 for 4 or an 0 for 5 game, don't say, oh, he sucks again. I mean, the other night, he struck out against Edwin Diaz to end a game against the Mets there in the last Mets series. Everyone's like, oh, he's a bum, he's a bust, whatever. Edwin Diaz strikes out 2 out of every 3 batters he faces. I don't know what they expect. It's not like Nick Castellanos is the first guy to strike out against against Edwin Diaz. So we got to temper our expectations, but try to find the glimmers of hope. And Nick Castellanos, to me, if you really watch it, especially that game a couple days ago when he had 2 doubles and a home run. I know it's a big stat line, but those 2 doubles, and I mentioned it earlier this week, those 2 doubles, huge, gapping doubles, very, very, very big sign for him to be able to drive the ball into the gaps like that because that's who he is. So can the Phillies come out tonight, Aaron Nola versus Chris Bassett, and win the game? What's it going to take? It's going to take Aaron Nola having another Cy Young performance. He is going to have to come out tonight and do what he's done all year for the most part, pitch really well against the Mets. He is going to need to go 7 innings, give up 1. If he gives up 3 runs, we might as well just say the game's over because I don't know if 3 runs is good enough for the Phillies. Because, like I said, if the Phillies going to score 4 runs tonight, that would be a win. He needs to come out and go 6, 7 innings, give up 1 run, maximum 2 runs. Needs to keep the pitch count down so he can go 7 innings. Set up for David Robertson, Sir Anthony Dominguez to shut the door in the 8th, 9th inning. I do not worry about Sir Anthony giving up that run and losing that last game against the Reds. He has a couple of those, and we talk about clunkers. I mean, he gave up 1 run in a 9th inning of a game, of a scoreless game. That doesn't really concern me too much. And like I said, if you can come out and get the win tonight, then that sets you up for the Wheeler-Peterson 1 o'clock game tomorrow afternoon. And Zach Wheeler is not going to come out and throw another clunker like he did last game, especially against his former team. I mean, he got rocked by his former team in New York last week. On Sunday it was actually, yeah. 6 innings, 6 runs. He just looked awful. But before that, I mean, let's see what he did the rest of this year against the Mets. 6 innings, 1 run in May there. And 4 2/3, 1 run there. That was his first start of the season. He wasn't fully stretched out yet. Zach Wheeler is, I mean, 2.92 ERA, 106 WHIP, 142 Ks. I mean, before that last outing, I was talking, is he not getting enough attention for the Cy Young? And he should be. So he is not going to let that happen again. Zach Wheeler is way too good of a pitcher to come out and throw 2 clunkers in a row like that. So you do that, and then you get the first 2 games of the series. Now all you got to do is win one of the Falter Gibson final 2 games to win this series. And I'm telling you, you win this series, you go 3-1 in this series, and the Mets aren't going to be questioning it because, I mean, what's it going to do? Take our 10-game lead, their 10-game lead, turn into 8. They're not going to really question that per se, but they're going to start to hear the footsteps, and they're going to start to feel a little bit of that pressure. And Kyle says David Peterson is not a bad pitcher. He's not. 6-2, 3.3 ERA on the season, 91 Ks already. He's kind of like one of those guys. He doesn't pitch a lot. He's called up during injuries. He's a reliever sometimes. He's kind of like our Bradley Falter, except way better than Bradley Falter. I mean, his last outing against the Braves, 8-6. So that was 2 weeks ago. 5 1/3, no runs. I mean, he's gone some relief pitching. Some of his starts here: 5 innings, 0 runs. 5 1/3, 2 runs. 6 innings, 3 runs. Hasn't pitched against the Phillies yet this year. according to his game log. But the guy's he would be in the if he was on the Phillies, he would be our fourth best pitcher in our lineup right now, in our rotation right now. So, I'm not trying to take anything away, but when you got Zach Wheeler going up against him, you think Nola and Wheeler should be able to go 2-0 against Bassett and Peterson. You'd hope, I think that it is very possible. On a little side note, we're talking about the lineup and how it's going to shake out. Saw a lot of people. We talked about Bryce Harper. He should be back. I'm expecting no later than September 1, Bryce Harper in the lineup. That is my guess. September 1, we don't actually play. So September 2, actually, I should say. We have a game August 31st against the Diamondbacks. Then he should be in San Francisco to start that 3-game series against San Fran September 2nd. There is a chance, in my opinion, that maybe he travels to Arizona with the team for the Monday, August 29th game, and they play it by ear, and maybe he gets into that series at some point. But by the September 2nd start of the San Fran series, no doubt in my mind that he's back by that. But everybody was talking about Bradley Zimmer, this guy they brought in. They picked him up off of waivers. Guys, everybody I love Twitter, and I love how people overreact to stuff. And it's one thing to have an Overreaction Monday kind of show for fun. But when you overreact, what are the Phillies doing? What's Dave Dombrowski doing? Blah, blah, blah. Arguing that they brought in Bradley Zimmer. First off, they transferred Bryce Harper to the 60-day IL. That does not mean anything is wrong with Bryce Harper. It means that they just transferred him because it frees up a spot on the roster to add somebody, and he's still on pace because it's all retroactive and stuff like that. They're just adding on to his time. He will still be able to be back on time. He's already at 45 days or 50 days, whatever it may be. And Bradley Zimmer is a bad baseball player. How this guy, everybody's saying he must be a good defensive player, all the reporters. The guy's hitting a .05 this year. 105. He literally has 8 hits on the entire season. He's played in over 70, almost 80 games this year. And he's got 8 hits on the season. But everybody says he's a really good defensive player. Look, he's going to be the last man on our rotation. As soon as Bryce Harper's back, it'll be instant DFA for this guy. And the Phillies, because of Schwarber not being able to play the field yet, probably, because of the Brandon Marsh injury, they really needed an outfielder. Some kind of backup outfield depth for the 9th inning, just in case, whatever. But it doesn't mean he's not going to play. He's going to be barely seeing the field. They didn't really have many options, the Phillies. It was bring up Scott Kingery. Obviously, they didn't want to do that. He had a nice little stretch there. I don't know if his hot streak is still going on, but, he had a little stretch there. Rojas, their young kid, he might be a center fielder for the future of this team. Maybe they just don't think he's ready yet. Or the other option was bring back Odubel Herrera. We don't want that anymore. God, if they brought back Odubel, man, the things Mark Moscatelli would have said on this show, Jesus. So don't worry about it. Bradley Zimmer is the 25th guy on the roster. He is there for emergency purposes only. Don't worry about it. I just want to know how a guy can hit 105, have 8 hits in almost 80 games, and he just got waived. And it's not like he's had a bad year. He hit 227 last year, 162 in 2020. Hell, he played in 9 games in 2019 and didn't have a single hit. 2018, 226. Hell, his rookie year was his best year. He hit 241 that year. And he had 300-plus plate appearances. Wow. Or 300 plate appearances. Wow, that 241. Man, that's good. Guys, don't worry about it. It doesn't affect anything with Bryce Harper or this team. It's just an insurance purpose kind of thing. You never know, but just relax on that. But anyway, it's important the Phillies come out and win tonight. It's important that they win this series. Could you imagine the difference? I'm looking at the Phillies' schedule here. After this 4-game series against the Mets, they got 4 more against the Reds. They should go 3-1 in that series. Then they got the Pirates for 3. They should win that series. Then they're going West Coast, Arizona, San Francisco, both winnable series. Then they go Miami, Washington, should win both those series. Then they go to Miami again, another winnable series. That's 22 games there after the Mets series, all winnable series. But then their final 5 series, you go Braves, Blue Jays, Braves, then you got the Cubs, Washington, and then Houston to close the season. So their end of their season is really tough. After this series, they got a very long stretch, 22 games. I just did some ballpark spitfiring, hey, if they win every series, which is not easy to do, but they're all winnable series. They go 16-6. That's 10 more games over 500. If they win this weekend, go say 3-1. Even if they split the series and go 2-2, all of a sudden, they're 20 plus games over. They're pushing 25 games over 500. Now you're talking about maybe pushing the Braves to the top wild card spot. Maybe you're knocking on the door for the Mets. Maybe the Mets collapse. The Mets haven't been perfect lately. Look, the Mets offense, we're talking about how important it is for the Phillies to score runs. The Mets offense hasn't been scoring runs either. Let me pull this back up real quick because I did it before the show. I was checking my numbers here. Listen to some of this. Dating back to the Phillies series, last weekend against the Mets. They've gone 1 run, 0 run, 1 run, 1 run, 6, 1, 0. They had a 9 and 2. So outside of their 9-7 win against the Braves and the 6-0 win against the Phillies when Wheeler got blown up last Sunday, their other 5 starts, they scored 1 or 2, and that's it. You're checking in under the DSM account? Yeah, I hope you feel better, my friend. I hope you do. I got you, my friend. The Mets offense isn't lights out. So this is a perfect opportunity. We need the Phillies offense to step up, but we also need the Phillies pitching to be able to continue what is a struggle lately for the Mets. And the Mets have an outstanding offense. I mean, they got so many great hitters in that lineup, but they're not clicking either. So it's a perfect opportunity. And if the Phillies can come out and win this series, who knows? Who knows what those next 5 series are all winnable series for the Phillies. If they can win this series, it could start a positive trend upward where they're not just in that second. They got a full game lead over the Padres over the final wild card spot, a 3-game lead over the Brewers for making the playoffs. Who knows? You win this series. All of a sudden, you're talking catching the Braves maybe? Maybe the Mets start to feel a little pressure. I don't know. The things that can happen when you get hot at this point in baseball. And let me tell you something. I joke about it all the time. The hunt for Red October. The fan base is going to be in full effect. People have been talking about the lack of fans in the park this summer. You win this series in front of a packed house, that is going to catapult to even more fans the rest of August into September, especially the weekend series. I'm telling you, the things that can happen from winning this series, it's really hard to not see the importance of coming out tonight, getting the win to start the series, and then using that to catapult them. All right, we're going to wrap it up here with the Phillies talk. I do think the Phillies will win tonight. I do. I think Aaron Nola, Chris Bassett, it's going to be a pitcher's duel, but I can see the Phillies coming out tonight, winning 4-2, and starting this weekend run great. But it's time to move on from Phillies talk. It's time to get into some Eagles talk. It is Football Friday here on Trending in the AM. And on the I Have No Sponsor hotline, joining me this morning is my main man, Shane. You see his Twitter handle. I don't know how to say it. At Half and Half, at TPL, or whatever that says there. He's the host of Chalk Talk. He does a lot of great content over there at the Painted Lines. Good morning, Shane. Thanks for coming on this morning.
Good morning, Phil. Thanks for having me. How are you doing this morning?
I am fantastic. Ready to talk some Eagles. I know you're not a baseball fan or a Phillies fan. We wrapped that up, and now we're going to transition here into some Eagles talk. And I don't know about you. We're every day we're getting a little step closer, and all the reports from this joint practice with the Browns. I don't know about you, but I love the joint practice. And I don't know how many years ago this started. It's kind of become a thread and a trend. Everybody's doing it now. I love reading the reports from these joint practices because I actually feel like I learn more from the joint practice than I do from a preseason game. And I don't know if you feel the same way, but all the reports coming in from yesterday, I'm getting a little bit more of an idea of what this team's going to look like yesterday than I did last Friday night.
Yeah, absolutely. I think NFL teams just value these joint practices more. It's a time they can come in and they can work on some specific things. It's not televised, so they're not putting film out on what they're going to do. I remember several years ago when it first started, I always just kind of looked at the joint practice of, oh, which team are we going to go get in a fight with this year in the preseason? Because that seemed like what they always were. But now it's kind of evolved into, I really think teams prioritize this. That's why you're seeing, the Eagles have joint practices with two different teams. You're seeing more of that and less of the preseason. So I think you get a much better handle on what the team's going to be in these practices, even though we don't get to watch them on the TV.
Yeah. I mean, you say it used to be just who's going to fight with who. But there's definitely some intensity. I mean, you watch a preseason game like last week, you get the starters out there for a drive or two. Then they're in their pads on the sideline, just goofing around, having fun, cheering on the young guys that are trying to make the team, etc. But you see some serious jaw jacking, some serious back and forth. Like yesterday, I know Devontae Smith was going at it with the cornerbacks of the Browns, and it lasted. The intensity lasted the entire practice, and I love to see that, because if you don't have this intensity in the joint practices, sometimes you just might not have your edge ready to go week one. I think these joint practices help up that intensity level, get the players ready for that first game this year being in Detroit.
Yeah, the Devonta Smith thing. I don't know if you caught the whole story on that. So it was Richard LeCount is the guy that he got into it with.
Okay.
So LeCount played at Georgia, and so Devonta Smith saw him in the SEC. But their feud, I guess you could say, actually goes back to a high school all-star game when LeCount took a rep against Devonta Smith out of bounds and then shoved him over a bench. So somebody dug that up and sent that out yesterday. So. They were going at each other yesterday, and my favorite though is Nick Sirianni yelled at Devonta Smith after that whole thing. Don't worry about it. The last time you saw him, you won the Heisman. So gotta love your coach coming to your aid, especially with a pretty good zinger like that.
So I mean, I read all the reports. I saw all the video clips from all the Phillies beat reporters that were there. It seemed like yesterday, at least the first half of it, it was the Eagles wide receivers dominating the joint practice. And we saw a little bit of it on the first drive. I mean, A.J. Brown in the preseason game didn't get one target, but his presence was felt, getting Dallas Goedert wide open, Quez Watkins having multiple catches. We saw the effect that A.J. Brown has on this team there. But from what I'm reading, from the clips I'm seeing from the reporters like Chris Franklin and so on, that A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith are going to be a really, really scary tandem to watch out for in this NFL season.
Yeah, I agree with that. Louis DiBiase said yesterday on Twitter that the Eagles have the best wide receiver duo in the league. And I'm not sure I would go that far. There's some really good duos in the NFL, but they're certainly unquestionably in the top 5 of receiving duos. And so you add in Quez Watkins, who is a really good number 3 option. You add in Dallas Goedert. The Eagles have weapons everywhere all over the offense. They've got a really good offensive line. It's all going to come down to just that execution from Jalen Hurts. And you can't get a great handle on that from a preseason game, but it looked really good on that first drive.
Yeah, I mean, you saying it's questionable whether they're the best wide receiver duo, but you might be able to say that the combination of those two with Quez Watkins and Dallas Goedert, the foursome there, might be one of the top foursomes, weapon-wise in the NFL. And I think not enough is going into the importance that the A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith duo, how great it's going to do, or how much it's going to help Quez Watkins, Dallas Goedert, and those guys. They might thrive more. I know I was on the Painted Lines with you and Deebs, a few weeks ago, and we were talking about over under 1,000 yards for all these guys. And I'm like, there's a chance that none of them will. But there's a chance that Dallas Goedert might lead this team in receptions because of how much open field and open space he is going to see because of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith.
Yeah, absolutely. Dallas Goedert, he's always been a high, well, I guess not always, because Zach Ertz was there, but he's been a high volume target for the Eagles, especially, you look at last year after Ertz is gone, who was Hurts going to throw the ball to? He really only had 2 options. It was Devonta Smith or Dallas Goedert. I mean, Quez Watkins was starting to come into his own, but there just weren't these options to take the pressure off. And we were sitting on predominantly these out-breaking sideline routes. And A.J. Brown adds that over the middle of the field dynamic. In an ideal world, the Eagles are not just throwing to a third of the football field this year. And that's going to make things more difficult on defenses. every one of these guys can get vertical. I mean, Dallas Goedert's not running like a 4.4, but he can stretch linebackers vertically. Quez Watkins is saying he's the fastest guy in the NFL. I'm not sure I believe that, but he's up there. Devontae Smith can get deep. A.J. Brown can get deep, and he can win, even if he doesn't get a step on his guy. You just have tremendous ability to stretch the field vertically, to stretch it horizontally, and all of that opens up the run game too. Last year, the Eagles' running game was so good, and it was with people just perpetually loading the box. And this year, they have the weapons to make a team pay if they choose to load the box like that.
Yeah, so I want to ask you about Quez Watkins. I mean, we could talk about, everybody wants to talk about Jalen Hurts or this guy. I want to talk about Quez Watkins because there's a lot of hype on Quez Watkins last year. And he had an okay year. I mean, Jalen Hurts was still trying to figure things out. He had his question marks. Everybody's hyping up Quez Watkins a lot this year. And I know he's an uber confident guy. Like, I mean, the confidence level him saying the fastest guy, that just shows how much confidence he has in himself. Do you buy that Quez Watkins is a legit threat as a great number 3 wide receiver? Because I want him to be. I hope he is. He will open a lot up. But I haven't seen enough from him to really I mean, he had a few big drops last year. Let's be honest. It's hilarious. KC checking in, saying exactly what I am trying to bring up right now. Is Quez clear-cut 3 over Zach Pascal? I really question whether Quez Watkins is ready for that big role yet.
I think that he is. Now, clear cut over Zach Pascal, I don't know. Zach Pascal's a really good blocker. And Zach Pascal, let's be honest, he looked better than I expected in that preseason game. So I certainly think all 4 of those guys are going to get play time. But last year, Quez Watkins ranked 4th in the NFL in explosive play rate at 19%. And the NFL average was only 10%. And so, and that was only playing, he was outsnapped he was almost outsnapped by Jalen Reagor last year. So he didn't have a ton of volume. And when he did, he was productive down the field. And you could argue that his stats should look a lot better than they did. I mean, you have the play against the 49ers, I think it was, where it was like the 95-yard touchdown. He gets tripped up right at the goal line. That should have been a touchdown. You've got a couple where he's running free behind the defense and he's overthrown or he's missed. And so, you could argue that Quez Watkins should have had an unbelievable season last year. Now, I don't think he's some elite receiver, but I think in terms of, a Z receiver, your deep threat, he's a guy that, he can run 9 routes for you and you can get him the ball in space. And when you have an elite route runner in Devontae Smith, you can operate out of the slot, which is where I think Devontae is going to be most of the year. And you've got a good route runner, a good guy over the middle of the field in A.J. Brown. I just think those pieces mesh really well together. Would I want Quez Watkins as the number 1 receiver? Absolutely not. But he's an ideal number 3 receiver. And I think he showed, some chops as a wide receiver too last year. So pushing him a spot down that depth chart, I think only helps him in terms of what teams are going to be, how opposing defenses are going to defend him.
They're going to have Reagor as wide receiver 4. I don't know, Adam. I was gonna bring it. He mentioned it. Shane mentioned Reagor. What do you think is happening with the curious case of Jalen Reagor? Will he get traded? Will he make this team? I say if he doesn't get traded, he's on this team no matter what. There's no way they're cutting Jalen Reagor. If he makes the team, is there a scenario where he plays himself into a role of actual serious amount of, like you said, outsnapped last year, Quez Watkins? Is there a scenario where that happens again this year?
So I would absolutely cut Jalen Reagor. I would have done it yesterday. The Eagles aren't going to do that because it costs them an extra $2.5 million to cut him versus keep him. And they're not going to pay to get him off the roster. Now, if they can find a trade partner, all of a sudden it basically is a break-even deal, or they save just a little bit. So I think there's a chance that he gets traded. I tweeted out during the preseason game, it really felt like they were just like pumping him the ball. And I wondered if they're trying to pump up his trade value. I would love to see him get traded. Barring a trade happening, he will be on this roster. I think he's clearly the wide receiver 5, though. Zach Pascal is Nick Sirianni's guy. He's a solid route runner. He's a good blocker. And to be honest, Reagor just doesn't bring anything. So Reagor is on this roster if he doesn't get traded, in my opinion. But I don't think he's pushing Zach Pascal for wide receiver 4.
I can see. I mean, look, I don't care who's wide receiver 3, who's wide receiver 4 or 5. Having AJ Brown and having Devontae Smith is going to make whoever is that 3 and 4 guy look better. So I don't know. If Howie Roseman could pull off a trade of JJ Ortega-Whiteside, he can find a way to get rid of Jalen Reagor. The problem is that we've talked about on this show is that Howie Roseman just his attitude of getting rid of mistakes or rookies or young guys that he drafts in the first, second round, he waits a long time. He tries his best to maximize value. You know, obviously Jay Jaw now is at the point after his third year. It was easy to just dump him for another guy. But Jalen Reagor only entering his third year, he's not just going to dump him for another guy. He's trying to hold out value. So let's just hope that this weekend and next week they feed him the ball and he makes some big play and somebody decides to take a chance on him. Also on the offense side, because I want to spend some time talking about Jalen Hurts, obviously, with you and getting your thoughts. We have spent some time on this show the last couple of weeks talking about the running back situation. And Miles Sanders, again, he's being held up a lot of practice now, 3-4 practices in a row, got a hamstring issue. A lot of talk about bringing other guys in, you know, whether it was Hunt or Jacobs, those rumors a couple of weeks ago, whatever the rumors may be. Where are you on your thoughts with Miles Sanders? Because obviously he's entering the last year of his deal. Availability is everything. He has shown the ability to get hurt and miss some time throughout his career. Can you be confident going into the season with Miles Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell as your 1-2 guy in the backfield?
That's a tough question.
It is. Because I keep my opinion has changed literally 3 times in the last 3 weeks on this topic. And after seeing him miss another practice yesterday, now I'm back to flipping. Maybe we do need somebody else there in the backfield.
Yeah, on one hand, I look at running backs, and I don't think running backs are terribly important to an NFL roster. I think they're one of the least impactful positions on the roster.
Agreed.
And then you look at the Eagles' offensive line, and I think the Eagles have the best offensive line in the NFL. And so can anybody run behind that line? I think so. Now, would it be nice to have an explosive player? Definitely it would. Miles Sanders can be an explosive player. The problem is he can't stay on the field. He missed 5 games last year. He missed 4 games the year before that. It's always something, and that's not counting the games where he misses the second half and then he doesn't miss, the next week. This guy misses a lot of time, and he always has. He's always been banged up. With the hamstring injury now, I mean, obviously it's preseason. You're going to be cautious. If this was that actual game coming up on Sunday, regular season game, would he be practicing? I don't have any idea. But they would certainly be less cautious. So that factors in. Yeah, I'm a pretty big kid. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I'm okay going to the season with Sanders, Gainwell, Scott as my 1, 2, 3. Because I agree with you. It's a very unimportant position in my book. Even especially when you got it's arguable whether they're the 1 or 2 offensive line, but they are the number 1 run blocking line in football, no doubt. The problem is when Sanders goes down, I'm not confident in Gainwell, Scott as my 1, 2. And I'm not saying go out and trade for a big time running back, but Huntley, I mean, I'm starting to lose faith that there's a chance there. I'm worried for the games that Sanders doesn't play that we have the proper guys back there. I really am.
Yeah, I'm a big Kenny Gainwell fan. That said, I mean, he hasn't shown that he's going to be a lead back. I think he's a good guy in a rotation. He's kind of your receiving, your scat back type guy. Boston Scott he's been more of a power runner than you would expect at his size and things. So, could you get through a game or two with Scott and Gainwell as your running backs? You could. Is that ideal? It's not. Kareem Hunt is all of the talk, especially since they're practicing with the Browns right now. The problem with Kareem Hunt is he's on the last year of a deal too. Makes $6.25 million. The Eagles can afford that, but they're not going to sign a running back. So you would be making a trade for 1 year. And I that's not a move that I'm crazy about. I'm not crazy about expending capital to go get a guy for 1 year when I don't view you as a Super Bowl contender. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if you could get Kareem Hunt really cheaply, a player swap for a guy that you don't want anymore, a day 3 draft pick, then I may be open to that, but I really don't want to spend much on a guy like Kareem Hunt. I would rather go sign somebody that's out there in free agency, if you could find a good fit there.
Yeah, I agree with you. just spending any assets on a running back just seems, I don't know, just seems pointless almost to an extent at this point with what this team is. But you do need a better. I don't know. There was a point in time when we traded for or picked up, late in the offseason last year, Jason Huntley, that I was like, all right, this guy's got some talent. I had seen some of his film. I was like, this guy could be a kick returner for us. He could be that fourth running back option, and he just never could get on the field. And then you see it again. I mean, they ran him hard in that preseason game. I think he had like 15 or 16 carries, caught some balls or had some targets out of the backfield, and he didn't do anything special. And that was like a big moment for him. So now I'm kind of tweaking, like, well, maybe he isn't that guy there. So I don't know. I think they need somebody else there, but spending a lot of money on a guy that Kareem Hunt wants to get paid. And I don't see a way that you could pay him and trade for him and stuff like that. Same thing with Josh Jacobs. And I just don't know about it. I know a lot of people are high on Gainwell. I've seen some reports that he's not having the greatest of camps. And
I've seen that as well.
As we would have hoped. But everything, the wide receivers, Dallas Goedert, the running backs, everything. It's all centered around Jalen Hurts. George likes to make the joke, Hurts is elite. Yes. So what have you seen so far with Jalen Hurts? Is it as positive as I've seen? I've seen practices. Obviously, we all saw the preseason game, last week. I see some steps being taken. I'm trying to be cautiously optimistic with Jalen Hurts. Where are you on the Jalen Hurts bandwagon at this point now, a couple weeks into camp?
Yeah, it's so hard to tell thus far. Not being able to see the practices in person, I'm relying on the clips and the things that people write. So I'll start with the preseason because I got to see that. So the first thing is preseason defense is vanilla, so he should look good. One real positive thing that I saw from him was the play where he broke the pocket and he found Quez Watkins downfield. Last year's Jalen Hurts, once he got the edge, he would have ran. And this year's Jalen Hurts, he kept his eyes downfield. He found Quez Watkins for a chunk play. That's huge. That's a big step for him. I need him to do that consistently. Having that speed, it's not necessarily about running. It's about being able to improvise, to extend plays, because, I can promise you scramble drills lead to a lot bigger plays than the quarterback running. The second one, though, the negative, the play that he gets hit out of bounds, he broke a clean pocket. There was a pocket there. It was clean. He could have stepped up. He faded back, and he invited pressure off of the right edge. Now, I can't see all 22 because it's preseason. It could be that there was nobody open downfield, and he's been coached in those situations to break the pocket and run. And so if he's doing what he's coached to do, that's good. I simply don't know, but I do know there was a clean pocket to be stepped up into. So, there's still a little bit of that. He's going to have to fight against that. But overall, on that drive, he looked calm in the pocket. He looked poised. He delivered the ball on time, in rhythm. It's hard to walk away and not feel good about that. From camp, you've heard mixed things. You've heard up and down things. I'm never going to read too much into like camp practices. I want a guy to test himself to see what he can do. I remember going into Patrick Mahomes' second year when we were doing the whole Patrick Mahomes is throwing a lot of interceptions in training camp. He was just trying to see what he could get away with. And I'm not saying Jalen Hurts is Patrick Mahomes. I am saying that everybody wants him to be a better passer. We shouldn't overreact when in a training camp practice he's throwing interceptions. I want him to be throwing the ball and figuring out what he can do.
Yeah, isn't that what practice is all about?
Yeah,
it's kind of
about practice.
Yeah, we're talking, dude. I try not to use that line. It ranks up there in one of my top 3 most overrated sports lines of all time. It might be number 1, and I'm a big Sixers fan. And yeah, I don't want to talk about practice. No, but you see those things. You talk about the practice and stuff like that, but then you see the joint practice against the Browns, and he's going up against. I mean, the Browns defense was missing. Who was missing yesterday?
They were missing. Greg Newsome and Denzel Ward were both gone.
Denzel Ward was the guy, yeah. But he was still picking apart in one-on-ones, on 11-on-11s. He was picking apart the Browns defense. Let's be honest. It's in a practice versus a game. The Browns defense is better than the Jets defense. Everybody's excuse was, well, he was picking apart the Jets defense. Well, now in a joint practice kind of setting, he was picking apart the Browns defense as well. So you try to take little scraps from here and there and try to read. You talk about that Quez Watkins play. I think that play, there was a play where he checked down. His first read wasn't open. He checks down to the dump off to Miles Sanders for a quick little pass in the preseason game. Those little things you try to find a little piece here, a little piece there, here. You put it all together and try to get the whole story. And I think it shows that he has worked on certain things this offseason, and he is ready to take it. We talked about, George brought up an excellent point in the comments a few weeks ago. He came in the league at A, he got to D last year. He's got to get to whatever, G, to be the future of this team. How far he's got to keep, as long as he keeps progressing a couple letter grades up every single week, every single season, that's a positive in my opinion. And I've seen enough so far to say that the positive trend could and should continue this year with him.
Yeah, Hurts is a guy that's gotten better really every year of his career. You go back to Oklahoma and you see the player that he was at Oklahoma. Well, by the time he started in the disastrous 2020 season, he took a step forward. You look at 2021, he was better at the start of the year than he was at the end of 2020. He was better at the end of the year than he was at the beginning. And I know the Bucks game, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. That's an elite team. I mean, big deal. I expect him to continue to take steps forward. The question is, how far can he get? And so right now, I look at Jalen Hurts. I've got him squarely in that quarterbacks you can win with camp. He's not a quarterback you win because of. He's not a quarterback you win in spite of. He's a quarterback that you win games with. For me, if you're going to pay a guy, he has to step into that quarterbacks you win because of tier. Because right now you're on that rookie deal. You can bring in A.J. Brown. You can pay him big money. You can go in and you can get Hassan Reddick. You can pay him big money. You can bring in James Bradbury. You can build a very complete roster around a rookie quarterback deal. Once you have to pay a quarterback 25% of your salary cap, there are deficiencies created on your roster that the quarterback has to be able to cover up. What I've seen so far in Jalen Hurts' career, he's not there yet. That doesn't mean he can't get there, but he is on a clock. And I think he's on a clock that runs through the end of this year because the Eagles have positioned themselves with so much capital next offseason. And so right now, could the Eagles win a Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts? I think they could on a rookie deal. He has to take that step to showing he can win, when those deficiencies are created on the roster. And so that's what I'm looking for this year. I'm looking for him to take that next step.
Can you see a scenario where he doesn't take that full next step like you say, but you obviously got to extend him, that maybe he takes can you see a scenario where he takes less than that elite quarterback money so that you don't have those deficiencies? Like right now, could we win a Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts this year? Yeah. We got A.J. Brown. We've got a much better defense than we did last year because we've invested in it. Can you win? Can you see a scenario where Jalen Hurts takes small step? So maybe you find a way, because I brought this up a few weeks ago, you find a way to extend him for 2 extra years. You tack 2 extra years at less than elite money. Be like, you're getting there. You're not there yet. We can always tear this contract up if you get there. And that's what I'm hoping for, that maybe a little too much.
It could happen. It'd be pretty unheard of, though.
Yeah,
I mean, the quarterback market is bonkers, and you see these guys getting paid mega dollars. And I if anybody would do it, it would be Jalen Hurts. You hear the things about him that you hear about him, and but that would essentially be asking him to do what no quarterback's done.
To re-break the quarterback, it would be basically re-breaking the quarterback market in the opposite direction.
Right. Except for, I guess you could say Tom Brady did that. He's played below market value for years now. Was he getting paid under the table? We won't dive into that too far, but he's also somebody that's made his money, and Jalen Hurts hasn't made his money yet. And so
do the Eagles have a Michael Rubin type guy like the Sixers have, where Michael Rubin's sliding James Harden some money under the table, or whatever's going on there, So yeah. I don't know who that is for the Eagles, but maybe there's somebody like that for the Eagles.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's got 1 year left on his rookie deal after this season. So you could still play it out next year. You could try to do the kick the draft. The thing, if Jalen Hurts plays that well, maybe not well enough you're ready to commit, but he plays well, the Eagles are going to have a late draft pick. That's going to make it a lot harder to move up and get a guy. And so maybe you get into a situation where you try to kick an extra first-round pick forward another year. Give him 1 more year. You try it again. I know this year's quarterback class looks good. That can all change. We never know this early on, but so is there a possibility that happens? Sure. Could the Eagles play the franchise tag game to string it along? They could do that too. there's options, but I think the most likely option is that they make a decision by the end of this year.
Yeah, probably the case. Real quick, we only got about 5-6 minutes left in the show here. The defense. What have you seen so far from the defense? I hope to have left about 15 minutes to talk defense, but now we got 5 minutes to talk defense here. What have you seen so far from the defense? Who are you most excited about on this new, exciting, possibly really, really good defense that we've got this year?
Jordan Davis. He was my number 7 ranked prospect in the draft. I was thrilled when the Eagles went up and got him. I think he's going to make such an impact. I've said that he's going to have a bigger impact on the front 7 than any other player on the roster this year. That includes Fletcher Cox. It includes Hassan Reddick. I think he's going to be a monster. You saw how many times he was double teamed with other starters or other guys that he's going to be playing with. I mean, the Eagles rotate. With that first and second group, he was being double teamed with other really good players on the field. So really excited by him. I think he's going to make a big impact. I think Eagles fans are still going to complain about the pick because he's going to have like 4 sacks this year, but he's going to be a monster to people that understand what they're watching in the trenches, which I get that's not everybody. That's harder to suss out.
Not the sexy talk. It's not the sexy talk, but you're talking to the man. I wanted Jordan Davis as well. I love trench football, offense and defensive line. It's not sexy, but I love it.
Yeah. And then having actual linebackers that can, belong on an NFL field. That's a new thing for the Eagles. We haven't seen that probably since the Super Bowl run. So I'm excited to see just how Gannon meshes all of that together. There's no excuses for Jonathan Gannon this year. I would argue he's got the best trio of cornerbacks in the NFL. Avonte Maddox is very, very good at what he does in the slot. James Bradbury was an All-Pro 2 years ago, had a little bit of a down year last year in New York. They've got one of the best pass rushes in the NFL. Now, obviously, the safety group is lacking. You can disguise that, especially playing in a too-high world. So I expect the Eagles' defense to be better. And if they're not, they're going to fire Jonathan Gannon because he's got all the tools. He had no tools last year. He's got all the tools this year. We need to see a big leap from the defense, and I really do expect that.
You say they fire. I've said it. There's zero chance that Jonathan Gannon is the defensive coordinator next season because he's either going to get fired because he fails or this defense is going to be so great and he is going to get a head coaching job next year. We already saw him get the interviews this past year. You mentioned the safeties, and last Friday I had Chris Franklin from NG.com on the show, and we were talking about defense a little bit, and he mentioned a little tweak, and then I saw after yesterday's joint practice some other reporters talking about it. There was a safety that I thought there was zero chance would not make this team, and that's Kayvon Wallace. And now you keep hearing more and more, and I saw a couple reports from yesterday's practice that Reed Blankenship, they got Ugo Amadi for J-Jaw, Andre Shashir, stepping up. Obviously, Jaquay Tart. There seems to be a growing trend that Kayvon Wallace might be an odd man out in this safety group. A, did you ever see that potentially happen? And B, do you think he is one of the final cuts? Or is that one of those guys you trade for a Kareem Hunt or something else, a player-for-player cut type move so you don't totally lose out any of that? Was he a third-round pick, type value there?
Yeah, I think he was a 4th rounder. I was really excited about Kayvon Wallace, kind of that positionless type football player. He's dealt with injuries that set back his development. He's just never taken that step. I think there's a very real possibility that he is gone. I think there's a very real possibility Jaquiski Tart is gone too. Jaquiski Tart, wow. I said when he was signed, he stinks. He's not a good football player. Everybody was excited. I was like, they were like, we signed a safety. And I was like, yeah, he's not any good. He's looked bad. He's been dropped down the depth chart in practices. So I think definitely one of those two guys is gone. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if both of them end up gone. I would rather keep Wallace than Tart if you're going to keep one of the two. But yeah, Reed Blankenship, this is going to be a big preseason game for him. He looked good last week. Andre Sacheret has started, he's looked okay. Marcus Epps has looked good by all accounts. And I liked Marcus Epps last year in limited roles. We'll see how he does, with expanded volume. But I do think there's a chance that one or both of those guys is not on the final roster.
You said Tart stinks. I just said when they signed him, I'm like, who? That my first. Everybody's getting all hyped. I'm like, who? I actually had a Google search to see who he was because he doesn't move the needle, Tart, for me at all. But Kayvon Wallace, everybody's hyping. I'm not a big college football fan. I don't know the ins and outs of every college team and every guy, every prospect outside of the top 10 or 15 guys. I don't know. I don't know this stuff that well. And when everybody's comparing him to baby Brian Dawkins and this and that, I'm like, all right, I got my hype. I got hyped up for Kayvon Wallace, but yeah, it's crazy to think that the guys that were listed as your second string safeties, Kayvon Wallace and Tart, may not be here week 1. It's kind of crazy.
I want a guy that will produce at safety. Jaquiski Tart has been an NFL starter for 7 years, and he has 4 interceptions and 18 pass breakups in 7 years.
Mhm.
I mean, he's just not a productive player. If you want to know who Jaquiski Tart is, if you watched the NFC Championship game and you saw Matthew Stafford throw an arm punt to center field to a 49er and he just dropped it and it would have put the 49ers in the Super Bowl, that was Jaquiski Tart.
Was that Tart?
That was Jaquiski Tart.
There we go. All right. So we're going to wrap it up there for the day here on Trading the AM. This is Shane Haff from the Painted Lines Chalk Talk. What do you got coming up this year with Chalk Talk and football this year?
Yeah, so Chalk Talk is a twice weekly podcast that I do Tuesday nights and then Thursday or Friday during the day. I do a full NFL review early in the week, a full NFL preview late in the week. It's Eagles focused. We always lead off with the Eagles for about 25 minutes, and then we cover the rest of the league as a whole. So if you're an Eagles fan, it's a good place to come hear my take on the Eagles stuff and then, scattershot stuff on all the league teams. I'm also planning to put out film reviews, assuming NFL Game Pass works this year. It was a disaster last year, but I'm going to try to put out some midweek all 22 film reviews this year. I got a couple out last year, and then Game Pass just exploded. But trying to work on that. Hopefully NFL will cooperate a little bit better this year than they did last year.
You guys do great work over there. Your show's great. All the stuff there at the Painted Lines. I was excited when you guys invited me to come on with you guys a couple weeks ago. I was like, wow, you guys do some fantastic work there, on all your Eagles coverage and stuff. And I love the game tape review stuff that you do, because that's the stuff that I tried actually on Monday doing some film review here on this show. And it didn't go quite as well as I had hoped. But I've never done anything like that before. So it's not easy to do that kind of stuff. So awesome stuff. And thank you for coming on. I know you just got your kids off to school and all that kind of stuff. So, I appreciate you jumping on for a few minutes here this morning. Shane Haff at @halfandhalf_TPL, the Painted Lines, Chalk Talk. Thank you very much. And, go Birds, right?
Go Birds. Thanks for having me, Phil.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, everybody, we're going to wrap up Trending in the AM right there. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll be back Monday, hopefully talking about a huge Phillies weekend, another win on Sunday from the Eagles. We're breaking it all down on Overreaction Monday. Jason, Mark will both be with me. Everybody have a great weekend. Go Birds, go Eagles. And, hey, I got my outro queued up this time.
And Philadelphia has it.